Hello and welcome to another episode of A Journey in Boots. I'm your host, Dorothy Odell, this evening. Sorry, there's been so many technical difficulties. I went to go live and some other Facebook thing wouldn't work. This is just a great night. Yes. And well, I wasn't even pointing to that. So we're not
I
even
am.
going to start
I'm
that.
totally taking accountability for my lovely, let's hit the button. I didn't know I was admin. Let's go. This is why you don't give me control. I'm just saying.
But we love you and it doesn't matter because I've done this before myself, so I totally get it. Anyways,
I'm learning. I'm learning.
That's right. And you want to do you want to message Mike since
I
don't know? Okay, because I don't see him in the back. Anyways,
So let's talk about your week. I mean, give it a minute.
my week. Okay, yeah, we'll give him a minute. You know what? Let me see if I
It just happened. Now I'm live by myself. Awesome. So we had Tony Joyce on here.
If I go direct my internet, then it's bad. But you know what? Hold on. Let's try this. My week has been good. I'm getting ready for our tournament, and it has been crazy, insane, busy, but good. A lot of.
Well, tell us all about the tournament when we talk to Mike.
Yeah.
I said, so this is tournament. Tell us all about it.
Perfect. So yeah, this will be the third year that we do this. My dad passed away in September of 2021 of cancer, and he loved golf. It was family first, then golf. And so I decided that in his honor, each year we would create the legacy for our family and continue on his love of the game. And so it's at the same place each and every year at the Tilbury Golf Course. And I'm actually really happy. We have 11 hole sponsors this year. We have 17 teams this year. We have, I think, 6 or 7 door prizes, and two of the door prizes is coming from Dr. J. So you should have signed up for the tournament because you could have gotten a session with Dr. J. I mean, it right there would have been worth it right there. We also have, for those of you that your AC is not working, we have Seasons Mechanical has donated a AC tune-up. So that's the value of $150 right there. I know. My amazing hairdresser, Carrie Charles, I just picked up an amazing basket of hair product because we actually have a lot of females this year. So that's cool. So a door prize filled with hair products. We also have a basket coming in for my girlfriend, Gina Dillon. I'm not sure what's in that yet. I have not been told. And we also, Hogs for Hospice. I don't know if you guys don't know what that is. It's a 3-day motorcycle weekend in Leamington, Ontario, Canada, and they raise money for the Leamington Hospice. So it's a great 3-day event. Well, they also have like a ginormous concert on Saturday night. Ginormous. Mm-hmm. And it's Quiet Riot, guys. Quiet Riot. And so they have donated 2 concert tickets and a huge swag bag full of stuff for our tournament. And it just so happens to be the same day as our tournament. But that's okay. You can do the golfing in the morning. And then if you win the door prize, you go to the concert at night. It's like a whole day event. So to go check out hogsforhospice.com. Mm-hmm. It's, they even have 50-50 tickets. So if you're not in Canada and you want to support my local people, go to Hogs for Hospice and go buy a couple 50-50 tickets. Anyways, we also have, so the proceeds of my event is going to the Chatham-Kent Health Alliance, where my dad was a patient there more times than I care to admit. And so it's going to the Patient Care Assist Program. So it's going right to people in our community that actually need it. I love it. This program pays for transportation. It pays for some of the, some of the medicine that's not covered through OHIP. If you have to be in Canada to know what OHIP is. It's nothing like your Medicare. But anyhow, just Google it for you Americans. So anyways, also, who else? Oh yeah, a $30 gift card to Kira's Rose Garden, one of the best florist shops in Tilbury, Ontario. Also, she has more than just flowers in there. Amy has a bunch of knickknacks and things like that. Actually, I bought a couple things last time I was in there, which one of them will be going out to my girl Jay for one of her prizes for Christmas. I'm ahead of the game, Jay.
Awesome.
Ahead of the game. And what else? Oh, I know there's more. I can't remember. Anyways, so yeah. So
I love your hat.
I know you love that hat, eh? Look at that. I got that while I was in Florida. So how's your week been?
My week's been good. I'm actually going diving for shark teeth Saturday. So I got my dive certification 2 weeks ago and scared to death. But I had, obviously Tony and Joyce, who does trauma-informed diving, take me. And what an epic experience. I realized that I had a trauma when I was 9 years old. So when I closed my eyes to take off my mask to do that part of the certification, I lost my stuff. Like I flew to the surface but it was because I felt alone. And part of it is I got trapped under a canoe accidentally, obviously, when I was 9 down Osabu River, Michigan. And I forgot that happened until I closed my eyes to do the part of that dive certification. So he walked me through it. And I went with Mr. Norman, who's been on the show, and my high school buddy, John, who was an Army vet during the first Gulf War. He'll come on eventually. He's just, he's not there
yet. About John today.
Yeah, he's a good dude. Here he is. We got him all the way.
We have got the man in the house.
Yay!
All the way from Virginia. The amazing Mike Murray.
It took a long time for him to get that link.
and you literally call me a good dude first thing. He's a good dude.
He is a good dude. You are a good dude.
I don't know who you're talking about, but I'm sure he's a good dude too.
Retired Major Michael Murray of the United States Marine Corps. See, part of my business.
Oh, we have another Marine. I love Marines.
We love Marines.
We love Marines. Yes.
So Mike and I have been working together for a long time, poor guy. And he's going to tell us all about LIbertyOVE. I've had his cup and his swag on about every episode. And Alicia, who was on last week, our officer who shot the line of duty, she was a beneficiary of the Trauma Recovery Intervention Protocol, which Mike is making famous for me. So, we want to hear Mike's story. We talk about where you were, where you are, and where you're going. And yes, we're going to ask you personal questions as you posted, but not anything too invasive. Yeah. And if you don't want to answer it, just shut me down like a Marine would. So,
how you doing, Mike? That's not my habit, as you know.
I know you're pretty good about it. He does. He's very transparent. He'll say, "What do you want to know?" And I'll be like, "Really?" That's a scary question to ask a psychologist. But this is all about you, sir. Tell us.
So what do you want to know first? Where I was or
where you were? What made you go in the Marines of all things?
Okay, so we're gonna have to go way back. Right, let's just go because this is the way I thought about this before I start that. So as you know, you guys have kind of convinced me. I'm going to try to write a book, and the book is on how to prepare to train trauma. And I was already starting another book for my children, really, and my grandchildren, if I ever have any. Michaela, if you're watching, Lucas, and it was just to kind of put down. Yeah, so I just wanted to, put it down for this. So I think I'm going to combine the two because they kind of go together because it's all going through all of this is how I learned. But so let's go all the way back because I've thought about this a lot today, and as you know, I've had to have a few conversations with my brother about what I can divulge and not divulge, and he's like, "Look, just divulge it all." So we were both. I was born into trauma. I was born with a tumor, and for the first 2 years of my life, I was struggling to stay alive, and I was getting cobalt treatments for a tumor on the back of my head. So I was an angry, traumatized baby, infant, right? And my mother literally would not have much to do with me until my father passed when I was 2. Fast forward a little bit, 2 stepfathers, both were abusive. Both, one was an alcoholic, one was alcoholic and a drug addict. And so by the time I got to high school, I had converted all that into anger. I had a lot of anger. I converted that anger into athletic prowess. I mean, I was just, that's how I became such a good wrestler, because I was so freaking angry as a kid, which propelled me to a wrestling scholarship, VMI, and then into the,
what is VMI? Because
Virginia
National
Military Institute. Yeah, that's right. Canadians don't know what that is. Yes, I call it my Canadian.
I love that. See, I'm not the only one.
Yeah. So
yes.
So from there,
I'm the only Canadian over 6, guys. Seriously.
So from there, I taught school for about 8 years and coached wrestling around this local area where I'm from, and then I always wanted to be a Marine. I'm named after a Marine. My uncle. I'm named after my uncle. Yeah, I was an English teacher and a wrestling coach.
He is so accustomed to telling your story. English,
And,
really? That's why you write all of that stuff down. Okay,
yes.
That explains a lot.
Yes, I'm a poet.
He doesn't even know it.
But anyway,
actually, he's a recording artist too.
Yeah.
We'll get into the music eventually here, because he's very talented. Actually, you all are.
Yes,
Dorothy
we're
wrote
all
as well.
recording artists.
She's got a book.
I have permission from Toby to actually play it. So I might play it one day.
Oh wow.
Just don't. He's not going to care.
No, I have permission.
Oh, okay. All right. So from the wrestling, I was teaching and coaching, and the money really wasn't that great. And I always wanted to be a Marine. It was named after my uncle who died in Vietnam. I was named right after he passed. And so I had a chance I had enlisted in the Marine Reserves while I was teaching school. And I literally fought my way into the Marine Corps active duty by getting what's called a direct commission. And as soon as I got to OCS, I started saying, look, I want to stay on active duty. So I finagled my way into active duty eventually, because it was my unit helped me. Let's put it that way. So I became an infantry officer, did 18 and a half years active duty. And, then I got, so I want to say this about the trauma part, because now I have taken trauma and anger and I've used it to become successful. So I'm living in survival mode. So in terms of like relationships, you have no idea how many failed relationships I've had because of all that, whether it's with family, whether it's with, somebody I dated, it didn't really matter. I just, because I never could, the abuse and the trauma and the anger, it just, I was known to have walls up all the time. So,
well, let's go back a little bit, because I want you to talk about some of the symptoms that you dealt with while you were active duty, and how did you channel them into becoming the excellent Marine that you became?
So so number one, I was always, the physical part had become such, trying to be physical. Like I will tell you a stupid, funny little story here in a second, but so the physical, driving myself physically was always an escape for me. Like I would go out and run 10 miles with headphones just to have quiet, be alone, so that was my peaceful. and it wasn't because I needed to get in shape or lower my heart rate or be better. It was just because it was, if I didn't do it mentally, I think I would have snapped. It's the same thing with the gym, you know, all of that stuff. And
So how old are you now?
So I didn't get my commission till I was 32.
No,
so
how old are you now?
Oh, don't what? You never ask a gentleman his age.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm 57. I'm 57.
There's a reason I'm asking.
Yeah. No, I'm 57.
Okay. So at 57,
So-
you are one of the most fit people I know, which I find
Yeah.
interesting because you have slowed down. You don't run 10 miles a day anymore, but you're still fit. I mean, like really fit.
Yeah.
Is that a Marine thing?
I think it's a Marine thing, and I think it's just a personal, you know, it's there certain biases, as you know, that we've discussed about, you know, from my childhood.
Yeah.
You know, because the only person I had in my life was my mother, and my mother basically ate herself to death. You know, so I was determined not to be
Right.
that. You know, it was very traumatic. But I would say the worst thing that it did, the worst way I manifested all that trauma was workaholism. Like I literally thought I had to achieve this and then achieve that and then achieve this. And if I didn't have something that was driving me to achieve, hey, I want to go to the Olympics. Okay, can't go to the Olympics. Then I want to be the commandant of the Marine Corps. If I can't be the commandant of the Marine Corps, I'm going to go be an astronaut. Right. And nothing's getting in my way. Like literally nothing I've ever, that all of that trauma and the way I was manifesting it forward, even though it was propelling my success, I was literally dragging a big stone behind me that eventually was just, you know, I was going to have to slow down either because of physical or mental exhaustion. And that thing was just going to roll over my life, you know, that ball and chain of not dealing with all that stuff. So it, you know, so I got hurt. So that didn't in the Marine Corps in 2014. So originally I got, just so everybody knows, in 2007, I ripped my hip and the Marine Corps misdiagnosed it. It was a labral tear and it just got worse from 7 to 14 or 7 to 11 and 12. And in 12,
of course you tried to pull through it.
Oh, I ran a marathon through it. So
that is who you are.
Yeah. So from there, you know, it turned into 2012. I had the accident where we were running from the IED attack, and I hit the roof of an SUV, up armored SUV, and you know, blew out my neck, and I had to have my neck fused. And then 30 days after surgery, I went back to work, and the first day back at work, this is sort of odd. I went out to the restroom. And the captain that worked for me, you know, I turned the corner and my hip locked up and it hurt so bad I couldn't breathe. And I'm leaning on Michael Murphy, the Navy SEAL from the movie.
Wow.
And his memorial in the Pentagon was right outside my office. And I'm in tears. So people walking by the Pentagon are thinking I'm crying over Mike Murphy.
Yeah.
Nobody's helping me. I can't talk.
Right.
I can't move. And finally, Jeremy Sabato comes outside to check on me. He's like, hey, my boss he just got his neck rebuilt. You know, what's going on? And he's like, sir, what are you doing out here? You okay? So they rushed me back to the hospital, did an MRI and said, look, you got to get your hip done. But I could not get my hip done for 11 months because they had just done the neck surgery and you can't do another open surgery. Right. So I was on crutches and pain pills and yeah. So, you know, from January of 12 to December of 12 and then beyond, I basically became a drug addict. You know, I was taking opioids left and right. I was overdosing on tramadol. I was self-medicating. I was miserable. I hated the world. Because now I'm fighting with my ego. So then my biggest challenge, you know, after the hip surgery and they realized that it had gone bad and they you know, messed up my body for life by accident, which is a complete accident. I struggled from 12 till 14, and I was actually on the working group to shrink the Marine Corps, and I knew that we were going to have to get rid of people like me. So eventually that came to my doorstep, and they said, you got to go, Hoss. If you can't be an infantryman, you're out of here. And I knew it was coming, so I was kind of prepared, and I worked with the Wounded Warrior Regiment folks to figure out what I was going to do. However, once I made the decision, they gave me 2 weeks. No.
I have a question, Mike.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a delay.
Yeah.
So when you knew it was coming, you knew you were ready to prepare your brain, but still at that point, like when you have a career service, it is very challenging to shift your mind and go, okay, we're on to the next adventure. Like how were you feeling in those moments? Like what did you do to shift?
I didn't. I mean, I started applying for jobs, I did the normal. However, I was consumed with anger, and I was just hoping it all would end. So that just threw me further down into the opioid.
Well, transition trauma is one of the worst traumas that we at Semper Modus we deal with. Because
and then
it's grief and loss. It's grief of your identity of who you used to be, especially when you get to the level that you were.
Yeah. And I was feeling sorry for myself. I'm kind of over it now. So the tour that I was on, I was that I got hurt. I was the lead counterinsurgency trainer for all of NATO, and the Marine Corps had made me the counterinsurgency SME for the Commandant, and the Army, the command gave me a Bronze Star, and the Marine Corps denied it. Then they turned around, kicked me out, give me 2 weeks. Then I get no award, lifetime of service.
What was the Bronze Star for? Can you share?
Just my job while I was there was to institute counterinsurgency principles into both the Army and the Afghan Army and the Afghan National Police. And we did that. I mean, it was a lot of negotiations with the Minister of Interior, Minister of Defense, a lot of Afghan generals on both the police and the Army, stuff like that. And so I was angry. I started having really bad, when I finally retired, got home to Chester, started having bad dreams, couldn't sleep. I mean, I remember 14, I was out riding a beach cruiser like at 2:00 in the morning. Chesterfield County Police stopped me. He's like, dude, I've seen you do here 3 nights in a row. Why are you riding a bicycle to 7-Eleven at 2:00 in the morning? Something's up. Because I would go and I would ride through the cemetery, and he's like, you're not supposed to be in the cemetery or whatever. And I realized I had to do something. And I had applied for over 100 jobs. I wasn't getting any offers. And then finally I got the job Virginia Beach as a Booz Allen Hamilton contractor, training, being a curriculum developer and instructor for all the advisors that go overseas, which converted to, basically what happened was the Marine Corps found a way to pull me back in as a GS employee and steal more information out of my brain. So I wrote a couple more books for them. I wrote the Security Cooperation Planning Handbook, and then I wrote the revised the advising handbook twice, and all of the curriculum and all that stuff.
Welcome to the government.
Yeah. So we're kind of getting up now to where I have an interaction with you. So I went through a really bad relationship from like 17 to 20. And I was just sitting around one day and feeling sorry for myself and being angry. And a buddy of mine from high school called me out of the blue as a pastor. And he said, look, I'm just kind of calling you, seeing what's up. And I'm just going to tell you, you're not going to be happy until you put your faith in action. So I thought about that for a while. And then I was hunting. I went hunting, I remember. And I said, you know what? I think I know how I can do this. I could do the nonprofit thing and help people. And I called Pete Hegseth from the hunting stand. And he's like, because he I had worked with him for a year.
Pete from Fox News?
Yeah, from Fox News. Yeah. And Pete kind of said, look,
you were his boss, right?
Yeah. And he kind of told me what I needed to do in order to get this thing started and things to look out for. And I was like, all right. So I went and found all the paperwork, started obviously in January of 2021, I started Liberty OVE, and I did some small things, help people, with financial assistance, wheelchair ramps, simple things. And then lo and behold, here comes the Afghan withdrawal.
Removing people's trees.
Yeah. Yeah. Removing the tree and building the wheelchair ramp for the guy and all that. So when the Afghan withdrawal hit, I started getting a lot of phone calls. So at this point, Dorothy, I had met Janelle, but I hadn't gone through Triumph. Scott had attempted to put me through Triumph, and I was kind of weighing, but I was like, what is this stuff? This is voodoo, man. And so I started getting a lot of phone calls.
Well,
which
you got to believe with Triumph. That's definitely an intervention that can be invested in.
Yes. So I started another nonprofit called Rescue Ops, and we were moving Afghans. We moved about 34, 40 something. And then it started to consume me. So I sort of shut it down and realized I needed to get back to Liberty OVE and doing things. And coming back to Pete had me on Fox News, on Fox Nation, on a special called Afghan Withdrawal, and Janelle saw me on the stage. I'm sitting in the chair and I'm going like this, and I was so angry and so jacked up, and I'm in my happy place at this point, to me. And when I got home, she was at my house. She said, dude, you're jacked up. And she put me through Triumph.
Scott called me and said, see this? And I'm like, yeah.
So I sat on my front porch in Norfolk at the time, and she put me through Triumph, and I still wasn't a firm believer until I went to stand up, and I had blue dots and dizziness and almost fell on my ass. And then she basically drove all the way back to Florida. I guess I don't know what you did, but you had driven from Florida to Virginia just to do like this hour therapy thing, and then drove home, I guess. I don't know. But I went in and slept for like 12 hours, and I hadn't done that in forever. Went back to work, and then I sort of, for about 2 weeks, I didn't know, about a week and a half, I didn't know how to view the world, because so many of the things that were going on my brain had stopped. They had just stopped. I was sleeping. I wasn't like hyper alert. I didn't want to like jump down everybody's throat, even over the nicest things, and it was just my whole world was this. It was like somebody took away my Marine. And so I had to call Janelle and say,
stopped all the political rantings.
Yeah. I had to call her, and I was like, hey, Doc, what is going on? I need help adjusting to this new thing, this new way of viewing the world. And I have chosen to fill that space. If you take all of those bad things and you interrupt them with Triumph, I have chosen to fill that space with my God and my music. And now I'm trying to, repair with my family and all the different folks that I've either beat up or cussed out or pissed off over the years. So it's been a journey. And that's why I want to get this to the world. And that's why I want to train as many first responders to do this, because I know it's effective for me. And now sitting here, I've got Dr. Corvea's report up, and we're over 95% effective at removing all those things that I was doing wrong that were jacking up my life. We are now 95% effective at making that go away. So
that's awesome.
What else you want to know?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that our friend Scott is in the house.
There he is.
Yes.
And he says, I don't know what you're talking about, but it's a morning process.
Part of Liberty OVE. He did a lot.
Yeah. So
we were talking about grieving the transitional trauma of leaving.
Okay. Yeah.
Say that before I answer that question. So while Scott's on here, because other people want to see this, if it wasn't for Scott, we would not be here today. So I got Scott through a skill bridge program. Yes. I was kind of floundering around. He was the dude who put me on the path of and did the physical work to get this thing going. He allowed me to go out and make, get the voice out there while he was doing the behind the scenes work. And he built so many bridges that are sustaining us right now. That's not funny. And he's had to step away for a little bit. Hopefully he'll get to come back so that he can get Nathan to the Olympics. So if Nathan fails, we're going to cut his fingers off. And if he goes for the, to the Olympics, we're all going to be there. Ethan.
Scott says it's his pleasure.
Ethan. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he sacrificed a lot to help, get this off the ground. He was a firm believer. He's the one that initially connected me to Mike. And Mike, stands behind this because of how it's processed in your brain. I can't imagine having racing thoughts to that extent where you can't even sleep. I can't imagine not being able to reconcile my thoughts every day, even if it's for 4 hours because I work too much. At least I get some. Mike wasn't getting any. Yeah, I was I was getting anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, and it was usually broken. And that, to be honest with you, that went on for about 6 months. I literally hand sanded and redid my mom's floors. I moved back to my mom's house because they threw me out so fast I had nowhere to go. And, she wasn't doing well, so I was going to help her. And I just decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to sand floors all night. I'm going to redo all this stuff. So I helped her redo her house and just to have something to do to occupy my brain.
Mom was happy, I'm sure, about that.
Yeah. Yeah. If you knew my mom, though, she was happy about it, but she wasn't going to let you know. She complained about the mess the entire time.
Wow. Well, sometimes mothers are hard to satisfy.
Yeah, that's, that's
good. A good cup.
What was that, Jay? You broke up.
So what, where you're at. Oh, Mike serves excellent coffee. Because some weird lady showed up, like he knows who I am, but he doesn't know who I am. So we're sitting out front, and he's like, well, my dog likes you, so you're all right. You're such a delay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I got you both.
So Mike, where are you at right now?
So right now I would say.
So where are you at now?
I would say that I'm at the point where I now know what has gone on in my brain, and I have mastered, I'm just trying to master all my emotions and things, let me think about how I'm going to put this. I am so much calmer now. Come here, bud. It's okay. And I'm just trying to be a better Christian every day. I mean, that's my focus, right? And it's like I said, my whole worldview has changed. The problem is the more I get to crawl into this world and realize that, how I got where I was and how I was living. Now I'm seeing it in everybody else. You understand what I'm saying? So now I can pick it out in other people like that. And
it's like buying a red Jeep.
Yeah, but sometimes that's a burden because you want to help those people. And, and a lot of these people don't want help because they wear their trauma as a badge of honor in some way, or they think they're going to lose a benefit, or they, and I don't know. I'm just glad that we're helping people. We're helping people along the way.
You just have to remember it's in their time, and they have to make the decision to change. But it's also very scary because they don't understand when you disconnect your emotions from the nightmares intrusive thoughts and flashbacks that they don't know who they are because they've adapted to the post-traumatic stress symptoms.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, look, this is going to sound a little strange. I'll tell you something. They don't realize that the emotions they're having under the condition are not their real emotions. They are emotions that are still being driven by that trauma. So they're living a false life. They're not really living their life.
Right.
So, and I guess that's where I'm at, is post, even though it's been a year or two, I'm to the point now where I'm starting to deal with, or find out and deal with and shape who I really am as an emotional human being.
Right. But for, 50 years, you've been living with this personality. Well, you thought was your personality, and actually it was just survival mode.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be honest,
thriving in the brain.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny because, coming back home, some people, I don't know how people perceived me before I went to the Marine Corps. I was gone forever, but now it's kind of weird to see some of these people, because I think they remember somebody else, a traumatized, angry, wild man that would, fight at the drop of a hat and all that. And that's just not me anymore. I'm not saying I won't fight. I'm just saying it's not my first go-to. And I was a jerk as a traumatized, yeah. As a traumatized college wrestler, I was, to be honest with you, and my brother tastes, I was a jerk. I really was. I was literally looking for trouble all the time. So,
because you were comfortable in the chaos. You didn't know what peace looked like, and now you're processing what peace would look like for you.
And to be honest with you, that's what was so attractive about combat. Like, I literally have given up family time to go to combat because I love the chaos. I love the excitement, the adrenaline, that, like, you fall in love with it. It becomes addictive. It's combat. Being in gunfights is probably the most addictive drug on the planet. And it's hard to come off of that one. But you look back now and it's like, what did I lose? I lost time with my kids. I lost a wife. I destroyed most of the things that are really important in life, and things that are, your legacy in terms of your family. And it was just destroyed. So I've had to make peace with a lot of that stuff.
Well, you have to forgive you. So what did you learn from this entire, in retrospect, you can't take what you've learned now and apply it to the past, but you can apply it to your future. So what did you learn?
Oh, well, so the obvious answer to that is I take all of this stuff and I build it into leadership programs, and I'm teaching leadership programs for DeCA. And it's amazing when you catch these young, fresh leaders, and you make them get into their own head. So I've created something called a process of growth. And, and it's basically getting in your own head and self-awareness and evaluating and wargaming the old, or replaying back the traumatic scenarios and trying to break their cycle before they become too traumatized. And we're talking minor traumas compared to what I went through, but in most cases, and help these people step out and become brand new leaders of groups of people for industry, for, the grocery industry, pushing them beans, baby.
Oh yeah. So
right.
I do want you to share, because you're so transparent and candid, I want you to share your experience and your journey with owning a nonprofit for 4 years, because I don't believe people understand what a nonprofit is for and what it's supposed to.
Yeah, so this is a tough business.
Be good.
This is a very, very tough business because it takes money. So when I started out, I had to, pay for everything, the lawyers to do everything, then the insurance. And I got about $40,000 into it with Scott helping me. And I was like, okay, this has got to stop. Right. This is destroying my life at this point. It's costing me money. And then, I've managed to run events and do things and gained a few, sponsors here and there that I'm very grateful for, that have helped me kind of hover around that, $40,000 to $50,000 a year mark, which our organization,
Right.
$50,000 a year, we're helping, hundreds of people. And as long as that balance stays right there, we're okay. However, imagine what I can do with so much more. The problem that I'm having is, it's the books, it's the the insurance stuff, it's the planning of a single event. People don't realize how much it costs to put on an event, and then all of the party planning you got to do, and all the different coordination. And then, but everybody wants to show up party day. Yeah, they want to be there that day, and enjoy the good time. They just don't want to do all the work on the left end. Something that's something as simple as getting things auction off. Like that's a person's job. That takes time. Go around and find all these things to auction off to raise funds. So it takes a team of people to do stuff like that. Yeah, and I've done a lot of these things. So the Richmond, if you remember the Richmond one, Scott and I, the Richmond Harley-Davidson concert with Creed Fisher, we did that basically. He and I doing all that setting up and stuff, and then the day of, a bunch of people showed up to help. And then last year, Richmond Harley, or Steel Horse Harley, I literally did all that myself the day before. And as frustrating as it sounds, I set up a 20 by 20, and they were missing poles, Dorothy, and the poles were all the way back in Virginia Beach. And I had to stop what I was doing, tear it all down, and go to Virginia Beach, come back that night, and start over. I was so worn out by the time that event happened. And then a storm, we got like an hour and a half into the event, and a storm blew the whole thing down. We had to shut it down.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
You need a team. You need an army of people.
Yeah. And I mean, it's dumb stuff. It's nitpicky things that will drive you nuts. Like, you have T-shirts of different types, and they're folded up, and you go to close up, and people just throw your cards, your T-shirts. So I spend a lot of time after an event literally pulling everything back out and reorganizing. It's like, why am I doing this? Like that, I have to find organizational ways to make it foolproof, stuff like that. It can become frustrating, but it's at the same time, I might get mad, but then once I get into it, it becomes like therapeutic, because my ADHD kicks in.
Well, you talk about $40,000 or $50,000. You talk
What's
about
that?
$50,000. That is a lot of money, but at the same time, when you're running an organization trying to help people, it's nothing.
Yeah, correct. Because what I really need are a couple of no kidding employees that are paid a decent wage. And, the first and most important would be a chief of operations to help line up a schedule a year in advance and get into events, and then an event planner who actually physically lines up the volunteers and does, because I'm working a day job all day, so I'm at work 8 hours a day, and then I come home and try to do all this stuff on the side, and it really takes a dedicated team. So I'm hoping that at some point I'll get a benefactor or a grant or something. And I have a lot of good people who help me on a regular basis execute things, and I have a lot of good people here that I grew up with that are hooking me up with people who are opening those doors. So I think it's just going to take time, and I've kind of learned to calm down and slow my roll, because as you know, and as Scott knows, Scott and I tried to go from zero. We tried to go from nobody to Tunnel to Towers in a year and a half, and it just doesn't work that way in the nonprofit world.
Sure did.
You got to stay over that 50. You got to stay around that $50,000 mark for like 3 years before any grant organization is going to give you a grant. So we're getting there.
Gotta make sure you can
feel
handle it.
your pain.
So what does Liberty do?
Yes. What do you mean? What do we do? What you mean? Our organization? What do we? I was just, we beg people for money.
Yeah, I work my tail off. That's what I do.
Now,
so funny.
So our main thing, as you know, doctor, is trauma recovery intervention protocol. We offer those appointments online. They are free. We also train that protocol at times. Most times we donate.
What is Triuph?
Huh?
Tell us what it is, Mike, in layman's terms.
Okay, so trauma recovery intervention protocol is a subclinical protocol that basically separates emotion. It's an intervention that's basically removes emotion from memory in the brain. And what that does is it relieves the stress that you would feel associated to the memory. And like I said, we're having about a 95 and really long lasting effect at doing that. And typical sessions about 30 minutes, sometimes a little longer. Most people need one session. Some people have needed two, and the most we've ever done. A single person is 3. And I think the coolest thing about this whole thing is that we can train it to peer-to-peer support folks in first responder agencies and spread this love all over the globe, rather rapidly, if we could just get a benefactor to help us do that.
Why can you do that? How can Triuph be used with peer-to-peer?
Oh, well, they can use it. So if most people, so my son's a Richmond cop. And so I will use him as an example. If he were to go to a shooting and have to shoot someone, they would have a peer-to-peer support person come to him afterwards to make sure his mental health is okay. And they're trained in multiple different protocols, not Triuph, because Richmond hasn't gotten Triuph yet, but they have other ones. And then they would probably refer him over to a psychologist. But a lot of cops don't want to get into that, to the referral phase, because then it starts to become a stigma. So if you can keep it at the peer-to-peer support level, to the point where you can take away, hey, Lucas doesn't associate anxiety, fear, anger with the thing that he went through, then you're basically healing them and keeping them out of a dangerous situation. So does that answer your question?
But the way peers can do that is because there's no content.
Yes.
You don't have to share the details of the event.
Yeah. And that's probably the beauty of the whole thing, the vicarious trauma that some of these folks, I couldn't imagine what you deal with on a daily basis in terms of the vicarious trauma, but people don't realize this. And I will tell you, this applies to the family members of the clients that we serve. Is if you're living with somebody right now that there's a military member or a first responder that has PTSD, and you want them to get help, then you need to look in the mirror, because you've been traumatized as well. Because they're basically traumatizing you by telling you the stories. And so that's the vicarious trauma part. And when we do this protocol, you don't have to divulge that stuff. And I've gone through all of those VA. I mean, I've actually had to check myself in after a violent episode to the VA. And I've gone through all those protocols. And to be honest with you, the ones, I'm not sure which one it is. And they want you to write it all down. And you come in and you talk about your little writings. That actually made me feel worse. I was like, dude, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You want me to write down all the things I saw? Like, I don't want this on record. I just don't want to think about it. And you're going to make me sit here and stew in it. Yeah, I didn't like that at all.
Well, not to mention, as you're writing, see, what people don't understand is when they're sharing content of their events, they're smelling, the burn pits. Yeah. They're smelling the burning bodies. They're hearing the explosions. And all of that is coming back as they're detailing it to you. Why would you want to re-traumatize them if your actual intent is to alleviate the emotions from the events? Like, that part didn't make sense to me. That's why I created it, is because I didn't understand why these people were making me tell my story when it made me feel horrible. So I had to do something different.
Yeah, and that's the thing I didn't like about it. That's why it never lasted with me. And that's funny because you talk about that and there for a while, for several years, I literally could not walk into like a porta-john, like at a concert or something.
Yes.
I would instantly vomit because it threw me back to a place.
Yep.
And that was pretty hard to deal with because that once that happens, you're in that. I'm going to stew on that memory and trauma. So that little trigger would stew a like 2 week period of time where I'm literally just stuck in that memory.
Right. Because your brain it's created to solve problems. We have an infection, our blood or our temperature raises to heal it. We get a cold or we're sick, our body doesn't work so that we rest. So when we have trauma, which is something we are not supposed to be exposed to, our brain has to have a solution. Otherwise, it ruminates. Yeah. And I talk about rabbit holes because what happens is you're thinking about the event and you're trying to find a solution in the back of your brain that you don't have. And then it sends you down these possibilities, these hypotheticals. And that's where we get into the trauma brain, right? So what Liberty offers, which is pretty amazing, is Mike works his ass off, excuse my French, but like the man works day and night trying to get funding so that we can provide service. So this one veteran, first responder, spouse, anybody who has served the community or the country never has to choose between a bullet or a bottle.
Yeah. So I'm just, because we're now talking to the audience and other people may see this, I'm just going to tell you that I have been there and I had an ex who thought I was kidding. I have literally been in that with a bottle and a pistol on a beach at least 3 times in my life. And now that doesn't really, that doesn't occur to me. And only by the grace of God, the last time I didn't do what I thought I was going to do. So if you're feeling that way right now, then you need to go to the webpage and you need to hit the Get Help Now button and sign up, and let's keep you from going down that path, because you're thinking from a place of trauma. And so that's one of the things let's touch on that for a second. Not only thinking from a place of trauma, but everything you speak comes when you get under any sort of stress, or anything you're speaking is coming from that place of trauma, and people don't realize it. So one of the things I try to teach very simply in the leadership classes that I'm doing now is that, we have these managers, and the institution that I'm working for, the culture of the corporation, they're dealing with a culture of fear. So I'm kind of trying to help alleviate that myself and others. And people have to understand so once you get under stress, you're going to go to your fallback. And if your fallback is that trauma, your brain's going to go right back to the trauma. And you may be speaking about spilling some sugar, but you're yelling from a place of combat trauma. Like the sugar really doesn't mean anything. You're just yelling at it because that's where your brain took you, and that's how it's manifesting outward. And then the other person's looking at you like, dude, it's some sugar. And you don't understand why. You think it's normal.
Right.
What else you guys got?
There's a delay. So what's next, Mr. Rand?
So
I do want to say one more thing while you're taking a drink.
Yeah.
I do want to say one more thing while you were drinking. Like I said, there's a serious delay with this podcast. I don't know whose Wi-Fi it is, probably mine, but suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And we talk about 22 a day all the time. And I know that number is really incorrect, and it has increased significantly since COVID, just because we have so many traumatized people and not enough people to serve them. So Mike has been gracious enough to vet some therapists, and there are plenty of us to serve you if you so choose to reach out. But I think the big thing with the story is the shame and the guilt. There's moral injury. There's all kinds of little pieces of post-traumatic stress symptoms that would hinder someone from reaching out. You know, even if you want to talk to a dude that has worn the boots, same as you, like we have those. You know, so I don't want them to think that I'm the only one. That's not true. I've trained a bunch of people in this protocol because I want them to have the freedom to reach out to someone that they can connect with and get the help they need.
Yeah.
So my question to you, Mike, is how away from them, that hesitation to go through the protocol? How would you take that away, being you're one of the recipients?
So as you know, I think number one, you have to tell them that if you are a disabled veteran with a rating for PTSD, the VA is not going to take away your PTSD rating and steal your money back from you if you get healed. Number two, I don't know about the women, right? But because I don't know what prevents women from getting trauma help. That's probably more in your lane. But for a man, the typical man, it's because you're doing one of a couple things. You're, like I said, you're either holding on to it as a red badge of courage because you're getting sympathy and attention from people. It's negative attention and it's destroying your life and it's not worth it. Or it's the manly thing. You know, it's the Marine Corps. Shut up. Let's not talk about it. If you get help, then you're weak. So I would tell them there's no such thing as being weak. Getting help is actually a sign of strength. And then, as you know, personally for me, I think it was from a religious perspective. I mean, it was literally, it was closing me out from actually seeing and feeling and speaking with my God. So, because I think demons had control of my head. I mean, I that was all. I was consumed with everything negative. There was no positive. There was no. I had no future outlook. So, what I would tell you is, you've got to make that first step. You don't believe it? Sign up, and what do you have to lose? Man, this guy's asking me to go online and push a button and fill out a thing, and he's going to pay for a mental health appointment for me. That's 30 minutes of my life, even though I can look back at 20 years of suffering, 50 years of suffering. So give me 30 minutes and I'll change your life, right? We'll take everybody on a trip. We'd be tripping around here.
I like that. I love that. I love that.
And if the officers are listening, look, CISM is great. CISM is critical incident stress management. But then the thing is if somebody, like, there was a situation that just happened, and I can talk about it because I wasn't involved, but there was a police department whose one of the officers lost their child, and they all had to respond to this. Right? They had to respond to the scene. And there are other places where there has been an officer or firefighter suicide, and their peers, their people that they spend all day and all night with, have to respond to this. There is a lot. I mean, it's like a shockwave that goes through the community when things like that happen. And I think, what have you got to lose? 30 minutes of your life to shift something that gives you nightmares, right? Everybody wants to sleep.
Yes.
Except for Norm. We're talking about him.
Norm's lying. He wants to sleep.
I can't tell you how many times I hear, I'll sleep when I did.
He gets his sleep, I'm sure.
He works too much. That's what's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's too busy.
So what's next
for
you? What are you envisioning? What do you want?
So if
I have better boundaries with my time than he does.
we're trying to build a place. I've come home. I've started putting a volunteer pool together. As you know, we have a volunteer, Judy, who helped me kind of do a lot of backstage organization on things. So we've collected a bunch of volunteers, and I'm trying to move those guys forward. But I'm working on this, buying this land and building something where we can actually have a home. I talked to Waverly this week about the town council about getting a legal agreement. I think we're going to move forward very quickly with reestablishing or establishing some veteran first responder trails out there, and building a headquarters out there. So that would really just be like a corporate, a very small. It's like literally an old home with like 2 bedrooms that we can convert into like a headquarters building from which to do this work instead of in the back of my fifth wheel, because I'm about ready to get out of a fifth wheel right now. I've been in it for a year and a half, 2 years, and I'm ready to get back into a home.
And, I was going to ask you that question because I know last time you were on my other show, you were living in your trailer.
Yeah, so. Yeah, and if you remember, it was going to be a 1-year thing that's turned into 2. And I'm done with it. I'm ready to get back into a home and build a life. And we've entered discussions with Jason Miaris, the state attorney general here, and he's the chief law enforcement officer in the state, and he wants to. I've sent him all of the results of our study, and he wants to try to train as many Virginia law enforcement officers. And he came back to me in an email and said, well, so what, other than that, what can I do for you? And I said, I need for you to talk to other attorney generals about the efficacy of this. And I know he wants to go big. I said, let's start small. Just let me train your Virginia State Police. Right. Let them tell you how effective it is, and then you tell other attorney generals, and we'll go from there, because that seems to be the fastest way to get around. When an attorney general, the chief law enforcement officer of the state says you're getting this training, you get the training. So
right.
I'm hoping that's awesome. I'm pulling that rope.
I'm ready. Quick. Let's go, Bubba.
Yeah. And hopefully at some point I can get to the point where this is what I do all day. Because I think that would really make a huge difference. Because a lot of these donors, they want you to come sit down face to face, and I'm having to use my leave to go speak to groups, and it's, I just want to get my life. I want to streamline it down to 2 jobs of this and my music, my hobby, a job and a hobby instead of 2 jobs and a hobby. So,
right.
Love that.
But
so where can you keep talking about your music? Where can we find this music that I sang on? By the way, I'm just going to throw that in there.
So there is a tab on LibertyOVE.org that has the music, and you can download the song for a very small fee, and that money goes right back in to help veterans and first responders. And then there's another song that Toby and I quite didn't finish that the band, the OGs. So the OGs, Toby helped me put Toby Christensen. I'm sure he'll see this. He took a poem that I had and basically put it to lyrics, and then we went and made it a song. You were there. So, and then
I was.
But I have dozens of these things. I mean, for some reason, after I got over the trauma, I literally probably. I just have poem after poem rolling, and I just put them in PowerPoints, and they kind of come to me in songs.
That's awesome.
So
I love that.
I've got some.
I
got some other
years ago.
So I was going to tell you, I got some other.
He did hear.
He did what? You broke up.
His website's called Hear, as in hear, like the ear.
Oh, yeah.
Hear the Hope Heroes.
Hear the Hope.
It's under archives. And Mike has 2 songs on there. I have 1 song on there. I worked with a Marine a year before I met Mike. And the guy was he was drinking himself to death. And I used Trip on him. And he now is a supervisor of a construction company. And he's doing very well. So he wrote a song as a thank you. I guess he's very connected in Nashville. And it's called Find a Way, and it's on Hear the Hope Heroes in the archive section. But then I heard that Mike was in a band, and I'm like, well, he's pretty talented. So
the Find a Way, the Find a Way was that Find a Way or Make One. That was my.
This is before that.
Oh, okay, all right. Because we let one of the other vets. Yeah. One of the other songs I wrote, Toby let one of the other guys sing it, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, Find a Way was March of 2020, so I don't think that was yours.
No. So, anyways, and tell you, there's some people here, some folks here who also wanted to help me, as well as my band, put some of this stuff to music. And all I've told anybody, if anything I have has any value to you, or you can rearrange it or whatever, as long as LibertyOVE.org gets something from it, you can have it, right?
The donation support, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Dorothy's on there too. She wrote a song.
Yeah.
Yep. That is
pretty awesome.
And now everywhere you go, people are like, go ahead, sing.
I will say, whoa. I just wrote the song. I did not sing it, nor did I put any of the background to it. That was 100% Toby, and he even changed a couple of my words. But the song itself is mine, but Toby did everything else. I don't take any credit for that.
Did you get to meet his partner?
I didn't meet anybody. I didn't even get to go down to, back then he was in Ohio. I didn't even get to go to Ohio. Yeah. I just sent him the stuff. He did it wherever he was at. And now the man's in Mexico until September. So we can't even get him anywhere because he's in Mexico.
Yeah.
He's got as good a as you do.
Oh my gosh. I'm losing my mind. The guitar player and the engineer.
CJ Lambert.
Yeah, CJ Lambert. So I'm going to tell you what, oh my goodness.
Talented.
Toby had an initial idea, and CJ walked in 5 minutes. He's like, all right, I got all the guitar parts, and he started overlaying things. And I was like, man, this guy, holy moly. Yeah, that
CJ was from Blessed Union and Souls. So yeah, he made it big, and it kind of shifted gears because of the beliefs. Same with you. If you're not Christ aligned, it's very challenging to work with people who aren't. And CJ is definitely a firm believer. And he does all the overlays of the songs. I think I wrote a song and he did it in 3 hours. It's unbelievable how talented that guy is. But his name is CJ Lambert.
So here's what I would tell you, because you said it. Yeah, yes, I am very Christ aligned. That's me personally. I do this work. Me personally, I do this work because I want to serve God. However, our client base, I don't care what you believe. I don't care what your race, religion. It doesn't matter. The only qualification for you to get help from us is that you can prove you're a veteran, you can prove you're a police officer, or you can prove you're a current family member of one of those groups, or active duty military. That's it. I mean, there is no. There's no such thing as woke here, because we all know what the qualifications are to get in. We're helping everybody, right? I will tell you the social benefit.
It's universal. I mean, if you
and I will tell you one of the things that I think that our Attorney General Jason Miara has kind of latched on was that we could allow the police forces because we need data back if we train those first responder agencies, was letting those first responder agencies use it on kids who had been traumatized from violence in school. And I'm like, no, you can have it. That's a social benefit. I mean,
well, actually, the efficacy rate and the recovery rate for children are much higher. I mean, it's in the 97 percentile. And the reason is because children are more resilient and they bounce back so much faster than adults, because adults have critical thinking skills and they go, well, why does this work? I don't understand. Yeah. And they start to doubt the protocol instead of just receiving it. Whereas kids don't have the critical thinking skills. So they're like, I feel better. I'm cool. So the efficacy rate is higher.
Well, and that's awesome. And I'm hoping that the is it Hampton or Newport News that's doing that right now. I'm hoping that ones we've trained are using it on some of those kids to help them. So,
right.
I'm
so
just
Dorothy
glad we're
always
doing
asks this question at the end of the podcast.
Is this
and so her question to you,
what is the one thing that no one knows about you?
Oh my gosh. The one thing no one knows about me. I don't think many people, well, I don't know. I wouldn't say no one. I'm a nerd at heart, which was a newfound skill after I got injured.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Like I'm a huge
But what do you mean by nerd?
Intellectual nerd. I mean, so I'm the kind of person who watches Jordan Peterson videos like constantly and I'm like excited about what he's talking about. And if I were to like sit somebody down, one of my friends, they're like, dude, okay, what's up with that? I read a lot. You know,
what do you
Hold
read?
on, let's talk
Inquiring
about
minds want to know.
You got to meet him.
Yeah. I actually paid.
You got to meet Jordan Peterson.
Yes. I paid a fortune to go sit in like the second row and meet him and spend some time with him. And of course, Dorothy, I'm sure you're being where you're from. You're very acquainted with what he's going through politically in your country. So
no
that's
idea
how
who the guy even is. I'm sorry.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Oh, he's Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's a Canadian psychologist. He's world famous. He's probably one of the most brilliant minds on the planet.
You need to look him up.
Yeah,
a lot of sense.
So
very rational.
So we went backstage and I waited to go last, and I wrote him a letter and asked him that, I have this theory that I can train people to face trauma better, and while improving their performance. And I literally can demonstrate how it's done, which is what I'm trying to write out in the book, along with the stories that go with it, and ask him to endorse it. And he was very gracious, and he stuck it in his pocket and he said, I will read it and I will get back to you at the first opportunity. So, but I listen, people ask him personal questions and stuff in there. And it's funny because you talk about injury. I don't know how much time you guys have left, but he sort of took, somebody asked him in there about the Afghan withdrawal and moral injury. And as you know, we were dealing with a lot of moral injury when that thing started. And
yes.
he said, look, almost all trauma is moral injury to one degree or another. And he kind of walked through. So that kind of stuff fascinates me now. I'm fascinated by the brain. I'm fascinated how the brain works, how the eye and the brain work together, how the eye can be fooled, how people can hide in plain sight, how you can create what's called automaticity, Dorothy, or automatic. So when you get these guys who get in a gunfight and they don't have to look for their magazines, like that's automaticity, and that takes work, and that takes training, and that takes drilling. So yeah, so I'm just fascinated by the training.
We talked about that in our podcast before about the training, and then when you actually get into an event where it could possibly give you space to have the fight or flight, they don't have it because of the extensive training they've done. Everything is automatic.
Yeah, so that, all right, now see, you're gonna get me to nerd out on education. and training, and that's because the training is not set up correctly. You have to take it in stages, and it has to be immersive, and they have to change, and no one evaluates the training correctly. You have to get into people's brains after every scenario, and then you have to pull back the curtain, which nobody does, and say, we created a scenario that was designed to stimulate X, Y, and Z in you and get you to react to perform this function. And a lot of police forces and stuff, they don't do that. It's just target, shoot or don't shoot, and the target's always the same distance, or it's within a given range of distance, and that's not creating the automaticity that you need, which is why somebody grabs a taser instead of a pistol, right? Or a pistol instead of a taser, and they end up shooting them because their training scenarios were off. And that was a trainer who runs the scenarios, as you know, and she ended up going to jail. So
Interesting.
yeah, so I nerd out on that kind of stuff.
I know you know. That's kind of why I dangled the carrot. But you're very, I mean, it's true. And I think that, you know, the trainings need to be variable. I understand the same as far as pulling the gun, changing the magazine, putting a new one in. That never changes. But the distance, the movement, the pace, what's going on in the background, all of that is considered variable. So my question to you is, how does the brain function in those events as opposed to the, you know, safe, secure training facility?
So that's the problem. You can't train in a safe, secure. If you want the reaction in the real world, then your scenarios have to be real world. And they need to stimulate sight, sound, emotion. Right. They have to be immersive. And that's great. A lot of people do that. You know, the Marine Corps spends a lot of money on, and so does the Army and everybody else, on creating these realistic training things, you know, blanks or simunitions or whatever, with smoke and noise and sight, smells, and villages that look like where you're going to go. That's great. But after the scenario, if you really want the student to know the outcomes of what they were supposed to learn and grow in maturity and in performance, you almost have to get down to the individual. And that's what our special forces, the higher end tier ones and your SEALs, and that's what they do. And they break into individual performance. And then the next time they run that scenario, it's not the same, but the outcome they want is still the same. So if I'm a cop, for instance, and I have a training facility, and I go to the facility and they have the same scenario that I repeat every year for annual training, after a while, I'm Pavlov's dog. I'm trained, right? And I'm trained to beat the scenario, not to react in the real world. So you have to make a dynamic.
It's kind of like CPR, you know, 15 and 2, 30 and 1, and they just alternate every single year. Like they have to do better.
And you have to get into the micro.
So I get it. But how do you
say that again?
My question to you is, how do you apply this to LIbertyOVE?
So eventually I would like to open another arm of this where we're training people, first responders, to face trauma. And we're currently exposing them to that and the trip trainings for a day. But I think if you were to, you know, the trainings are actually separate because one of them is for the actual officers in the street, and one of them is for the peer-to-peer support folks of any. So right now we're just kind of exposing people with a day of this. And what I'm really giving them is the meat and potatoes of the andragogy and sequencing of learning you kind of have to go through prior to getting to the practical exercises that, you know, that they want, and explain to them the theory that I have about how to do this. And that theory comes from years and years of training Marines and how to do this stuff and my own experiences.
So we want you to stay on after the podcast. 1, we want to thank you for coming on. And 2, I want you to give some final thoughts for the people that fast forward to the end and give us the abbreviated version of LIbertyOVE and why they need to go to your website and why they need to sign up.
So the biggest thing is trauma recovery intervention protocol is having a huge success rate at healing people. We now have the data. We're over 95% successful at ending PTSD. And I won't say ending PTSD because it's probably the wrong statement. We're ending how it manifests in your life. We can interrupt it and stop it. And then, and that's the symptoms. And then we can work with you to fill that gap correctly and put you on a new path in life. I would say that we're raising funds every single day to try to, the appointment's free. It's 30 minutes or less. Just go to libertyove.org and hit the Get Help Now button. And if you're watching this and you want to support us, you can go to the same webpage and hit the donate button or hit the sign up as a volunteer, and it doesn't matter where you're at. We'll try to find something for you to do. I would love to get into other states and doing events in other states at some point to kind of spread our word. We're in Florida and Virginia right now, and we kind of need to break out into other places. And I want to thank you, wonderful ladies, for having me on here. And I know you had the beautiful.
We put a ringer, boy.
Yeah, you had I wrote today on Facebook. You had Alicia on, and it's been kind of fun to watch her post. Getting shot post trip, and I mean, so if you look at her pre-trip on Facebook, and then post-trip, post-healing of her gunshot wound to where she is now in her life. And what's about to happen in her, dude, that's awesome. Like, I love it, man. That's the whole, that makes it worth it.
I love that. And you're right.
She's doing really, really well.
Yep. Well, Mike, we want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your trauma to triumph. And, I'm sure people will have a lot more questions. And so if you have any questions for Mike, definitely go over to LibertyOVE.org. And I'm sure there's like a chat button or contact us or something on the website. So to go over there and check that out. Just want to say, if you want any information on, of course, what RJ does, definitely go to sempermodusllc.com. If you'd like any information on us here at Unstoppable Overcomers Productions, go to unstoppableovercomers.com and go check that out. And same time, same channel next week, folks. Bye for now. And remember what Dr. J said. Dr. J said a 30-minute conversation can change your life completely. So instead of having a split second where you think nothing's going to work, I think 30 minutes of your time can totally transform your life. I don't know why I can't talk right now, but anyways, reach out to Liberty OVE or Dr. J and make that appointment today. Yes, stay safe, and we'll see you next week.